So, dear ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for having me here again after last year. Climate imperative is the topic, and we've heard a few very valuable inputs from the speakers here. A few key messages that I would like you to take back home on this topic. Point one, I think to solve, and I think the term biggest fucking problem is quite accurate, is we need massively to increase cooperation among stakeholders, message one. Message two, attempt in any point in time to reduce complexity of the problem. And point three, and most importantly for the people in this room, hyperscale capital flows into climate solutions. That's the reason basically why we're here. Why? The why of the urgency, I think, is pretty clear. If we look at the target, stay below or reach below 1.5 degrees of warming, reality of the pledges indicates that we will arrive at above 2 degrees. And if you look at the current action policies, the average temperature rise will be 2.7 degrees of warming by 2100. So we're definitely not walking the talk. Yet, on an economic level, on a policy level, on all the levels, basically. So that's the reality. And if you look at the outputs of COP27, that's basically a loss and damage fund, which is good, but for the rest, not very, let's say, many advantages or progresses that we have seen there. So, why is that the case? And if I look at the climate change problem from a more, let's say, scientific point of view, it's a classical messy or wicked problem, okay? It involves multi-causal implications. The solutions that you address usually have unforeseen consequences for many different stakeholders. It implies social changes or the changes of behavior of different stakeholders, policymakers, companies, customer, clients, ourselves as private people. So it also involves massive economic capital that is needed to have an effect on the changes and the progress with regard to the solutions, and the risk of policy failure is huge. So that's the classical definition of a messy, wicked problem. In that sense, capital flows is a key element in order to achieve progress in the right direction. And I think I wouldn't be a banker if I can't put some numbers to the problem. Recent studies indicate that we need to invest for the next 30 years 7.5% of the GDP. That is an equivalent of 9.2 trillions per annum every year until 2050. That is roughly 275 trillions cumulated until 2050. That's a huge sum. Even for a banker which is used to deal with large numbers with a lot of zeros, trillions is still another dimension, okay? At the same time, stranded assets, particularly in the fossil fuel industry and the coal industry, could amount up to 2.1 trillion assets, which is currently invested in forms of capital and investments among financial markets. To put that in relation, IRA, Inflation Reduction Act in the United States, implies an investment of 370 billion by 2030. The EU Green Deal implies 1 trillion investments up to 2030. The Repower Act, 3.7 trillion by 2030. That's nowhere near the numbers we need to reach to get there. So what is a trillion? Just imagine that. A trillion is a lot of money. It's the US military expenditures annual level is 800 billion every year. The GDP of Switzerland is 810 billion. The educational expenses of Switzerland every year is 40 billion. So the average fundraising of the European private equity market for the past 10 years has been 70 billion every year for the past 10 years. 70 billion. We're talking trillions here. And that's a massive number that we need to reach in order to finance the transition and the transformation of basically the whole economy and a large part of the society. Where does the money and the capital need to flow? It needs to flow in the areas that generate the largest emissions. That's pretty clear. It's about power generation, largely electricity. It's about industry. Steel and cement make the large chunk of the CO2 emissions. And finally, it's about mobility, whereas again, it's about electrification of road transport by large in it. So if we address that, it's pretty clear. This is not about digitalization, it's not about tech, it's about high CapEx investments, high CapEx. This implies larger size tickets at an earlier stage of companies for a longer period of time. That's quite a change from what I would say we've been doing in the private equity area for the past 10 years. And that's what we probably need to do for the next 10, 20, 30 years. High CapEx, earlier stage, for longer. We'll talk a lot about disruption, and I think disruption is key. It's elemental, it's very important. It's about capturing CO2 from the air. It's about, I don't know, decarbonizing cows, whatever. But it's even more about innovation, doing the same things better every day, again and again, increasing the efficiency of renewables, coming up with new ideas, having better batteries for saving and storage of energy. That's a large and key part of the transition story. And also, if we can get disruptive innovation that basically makes old things obsolete or changes the way we do things tomorrow, that's good. And having a balance between innovation and disruption and seeking this business model that can bring solutions to the climate imperative will be key from a private equity part for the future. So what we've been doing, Swisscanto is one of the larger asset managers in Switzerland. It's the asset management arm of Zurich Kantonalbank, which basically has a very strong and long footprint in sustainable investments for the past 25 years. We've been thinking of launching a decarbonization strategy in the private equity area. Our colleagues, Christian and Charlotte, will deep dive this strategy in the next panel. But basically, we've done a first close. We've reached 90 million. We aim reaching 250 million by the end of next year. And we try and will attempt to do what we've been saying in these slides. So invest in innovation, invest in disruption, and try to identify the business models that will bring impact and change with regard to the climate imperative. In order to do that, let me close here. Cooperation again, cooperation among investors, companies, and particularly the large investors, so the pension funds, which maybe or maybe not in the room here, that is key. The average pension fund in Switzerland invests 0.8% of its assets in private equity, not even talking about impact private equity in general. So we're talking about the 1.1 trillion pension fund market in Switzerland, which probably needs to move in a certain direction in order to mobilize capital in the right direction for climate solutions. That's something that we can achieve together, have the right discussions, help each other to move in that direction. I think we can achieve that. It's a huge challenge, but I think we are in a good way, and we need to move faster and bigger in our aims and ambitions with regard to this challenge. So thank you very much, and see you later.